Twitch is still reeling from this massive overhaul they did to their TOS as it regards to sexual content. They first basically made it a free-for-all for sexual content, made nudity in art and all contexts allowed on the platform. They realized that was a huge mistake. I think that their advertisers were unhappy with the decision. So a day later, they had to backpedal and reverse that specific change. But a lot of things are remaining the same. So yes, you are now allowed to do strip teases on the platform. You're allowed to twerk and do sexual dances. Make disrobing gestures, or just, straight up be a stripper or pole dancer on a 13+ platform. So that is allowed. The only change they reversed is now nudity, whether it is real or illustrated in artwork, is not allowed in any context, even with a label. So it looks like a bunch of art streamers who were taking advantage of the rule change have been banned in massive amounts. Yeah. And they're really angry about it because it's confusing to constantly switch back and forth what's allowed on the platform.
And the art category hit record viewership numbers because of the original policy change.
Yeah, they said that the art section on the platform increased in viewers by over 3,000, and it became filled with sexual anime and furry content. Again, who could have seen this coming? Their CEO says, I couldn't have ever predicted that when I allowed porn on my streaming platform that there would be porn on the homepage. Who could have predicted that? Not me. So he plays ignorant, and all of these people are getting their Twitch channels banned or removed, including the girl who was at the center of all this controversy named Morgpie. She had her channel banned. She won't say if it's temporary or permanent, but she did an interview with Dexerto trying to explain what has happened and what she's going to do next, because she was one of these girls taking advantage of the topless meta trend, where she actually says she was wearing a top the entire time, but cut off the camera at a point that made it look like she was wearing no clothes. She said, nobody's breaking TOS. It's just implied nudity that really freaks people out. And she revealed the reasons given for her ban by Twitch are saying that she was giving lap dances, which didn't happen. Another reason cited was that she was recounting a sexual experience in graphic detail for a prolonged period of time, which also she claims didn't happen. And another one of the reasons given was that she was making explicit gestures towards breasts, buttocks, or genitals on stream. And she said, I can kind of see their thinking behind the last reason. But otherwise, she claims innocence. She says, I think there are constantly people on the platform that abuse very vague terms of service that Twitch has. It's why Amouranth is as wealthy as she is. I probably won't be doing topless stuff until I see what the platform does ultimately. It looks like the topless meta is still happening on Twitch, but she doesn't want to do it anymore because she's worried about getting permabanned at this point, as she should be. This whole thing should have never happened, and Eric July was right about what he said on Friday. This is a sign of incompetence from top to bottom on Twitch's part, and degenerate people on the internet are going to take any opportunity they get to broadcast their degeneracy and filth and obscenity onto whoever will watch, whoever will pay. And unfortunately, that includes a lot of minors who are allowed on this platform not only to view these streams, but also stream themselves. That's just, it's so blatantly obvious that that shouldn't be allowed. And I can't believe it's even a debate. And they still, as a platform, have yet to address this groomer ring of thousands of people and hundreds of thousands of alleged victims that Bloomberg reported. They don't really care about the safety of their minor users.
Yeah. Do you think that will ever come to pass, that they'll ever figure that out?
They've figured it out. They just don't care.
Yeah.
That's the thing. It's profits before ethics. That's the case for any corporation.
Yep.
But you would think that when it comes to children, that would be an exception. Like, that would be one thing we all consider sacred, is children's innocence. And yet that is really what's being primarily targeted here.
I was thinking about it the other day, said, because, growing up, it was one of those things that people would talk about, like, look, boys were exposed to this type of stuff, whether they saw a father's magazine or something back in the day. I think the most harmful aspect of all of these things now is the interactive aspect with the other person, right? It's just as much as all of the actual the visuals that you're getting. It's the fact that you can then interact with this person in what is essentially a quasi-sexual experience, right? And that's hardwiring your brain very differently than if you were just looking at a static image on a magazine.
Did you see the list of popular search terms that Pornhub published?
I saw the video game list. Yeah.
Well, I saw the popular term searches by generation, and for Gen Z, it's a lot of these terminally online search terms. And the top one that I saw for Gen Z was the word interactive. So clearly, Gen Z is gravitating toward pornographic material that forms a parasocial relationship with them. And that's very disturbing.
It's the reason why OnlyFans works when they could go and get it for free elsewhere, is the interactive nature of it. That also, it's why so many of them keep their platforms outside of just something like OnlyFans. It's not just the idea that you're interacting with somebody who's famous on OnlyFans, but the idea of being an influencer or being somebody famous online is very, it's something that a lot of young kids want, right? So the idea that you're then interacting with someone of a level of fame that you're not in is extremely appealing to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And they're reading out your username when you give them a certain amount of donations.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very sinister. And Amaranth has been accused of grooming minor viewers of her streams before, and no one seems to care enough to call it out or penalize her on the platform for it, because presumably she's a woman. I mean, and she doesn't look like the stereotypical creep that you would imagine on the internet.
Well, I say the same thing about all of these teachers who have relationships with these female teachers who end up having relationships with kids. And when the male teacher does it, it's abuse. When a female teacher does it, it's misconduct. Right? There's different rules for different people, and that's just the sad fact of the world. It's what we talked about earlier. Why Ezra Miller was treated differently than Jonathan Majors, that different people are going to be treated differently. Welcome to the world. It sucks.
YouTube isn't without its own problems in this area. I would say YouTube is more strict about sexual content for sure. Yeah. But that's not to say people don't fly under the radar and make content that is very clearly targeting an audience of children, that has sexual themes and violent themes and themes that should be for adults. I mean, really, it's not great for anyone, but ElsaGate happened. Yeah. What did YouTube do to remedy the platform after ElsaGate? They just made a platform that's separate called YouTube Kids that has equal brain sludge content. Yeah. You just can't comment on things or use... I don't understand. Does anybody know? Maybe somebody in the comments can let me know. Why is it that when... like certain people will make videos YouTube Kids so that there's no comments on there? Right? You can't put things on YouTube Kids into mini player. Like, it can't be. Why is that? I've noticed that too. I'm honestly not sure. I guess it's because when a parent puts their kid in front of the TV to watch a YouTube video, or gives their kid an iPad to watch a YouTube video, they don't want their kid to go into the search bar and start searching for different things at the same time. I guess. So it would incentivize the kid to keep their eyes on just the content that was approved for them to watch. You put all of this stuff from Twitch together, and you add the fact that we just had a story yesterday about AI girlfriends, and young men right now are facing a lot of crises that are going to be very, very hard to get through when you're just trying to grow up and become
a functioning adult, all while every aspect of what it means to be a man is attacked as you grow. Forming these parasocial relationships, not building bonds with other actual human beings, all of these things that are detrimental to actually growing up to being a whole person. And you wonder why we are more depressed as a culture than we've ever been, why antidepressant use is so high.
I wanted to read more of these quotes from Morgpie in her interview because there are parts of it that I totally agree with. She argues there's nothing about Twitch that screams child-friendly. She notes that broadcasters often play games with sexual themes or sex scenes in them and discuss sexual content on a regular basis on their streams, and none of this has to be age-restricted. So it wasn't a child-friendly platform before these rule changes, and it certainly isn't going to be after. And she also said if they don't want sexual content on their platform, they need to outright ban that, although it would be very difficult for them to do so. By that, she means they don't want to sacrifice the revenue and the viewership to protect children on the platform. They just don't. They've made their value judgment, and they want profits over safety for children. She said, I think whether I'm doing it, some other girls are doing it, some guys are doing it, Twitch doesn't want sexual content. I think a part of the TOS does list that certain sexually explicit content isn't allowed, but people stream sex in video games all the time, and people do have sexual discussions on the platform constantly, whether it's men or women.
So what's the fix here? My stance. I think the parents need to be paying closer attention to everything that their kids are doing. They need to pay close attention to what their kids are accessing on their computers and tablets. And you shouldn't be giving your kid a phone at 13.
Yeah, I mean, I've said this, that a lot of the parents of Gen Z couldn't have predicted the way that the internet would be interacted with in the 2010s or the 2020s. They just couldn't have predicted that because they didn't grow up with it. Yeah. But now that we're getting to a point where millennials, who are considered internet natives, and Gen Z are becoming parents, they do know better. They ought to know better, and they ought to implement restrictions as such. And I don't think there is any excuse anymore to give your children unfettered access to the internet. We've had enough time to study the effects, whether it's just anecdotal observations or studies that are coming out about the psychological effects that iPad use is having on babies and toddlers. We have enough information at our disposal at this point that you cannot excuse giving your children unsupervised and unlimited internet access. It's going to fry their brains, and even worse, it's going to push sexual content into their faces at a time when they're extremely suggestible, and it's going to rewire their brains for life. That is irreversible damage.
Nobody is coming to save you. Not a single soul. The public school system isn't coming to save you. Certainly no Fortune 500 multinational corporation is coming to save you. Nobody. Nobody is going to raise your kids properly. You have to do it yourself. And as somebody who doesn't have any kids, I don't envy the decisions that have to be made and how much you're going to have to watch them like a hawk. Look, somebody pointed out last time that, look, these kids are still going to go to school and their friends are still going to have phones and their friends are still going to have tablets and they're still going to be around this content. Yes, that is true. But that doesn't mean you can't head it off at the pass at the place where they spend most of their time, which is at home. Mm-hmm. And I said, I don't envy the decisions that parents have to make these days, but we live in a world now that is so suggestible, that kids are going to be so suggestible that it's scary.
I would say a lot of people talk about get your kids off TikTok. TikTok is destroying their brains. It's a Chinese psyop, all of this stuff. And I totally agree with that, all of that. It's not a good idea for children to be on TikTok. It's probably not a good idea for adults to be on TikTok, but there are other platforms that have the same problems or worse, and Twitch is one of them. And the problem is, I think parents, it's not just parents though. All of society is becoming more narcissistic, self-indulgent, and self-involved. So that includes parents just by default. Yeah. So I'm not blaming parents as a group. I'm blaming everyone's. I mean, society is making everyone more narcissistic and self-involved, and that includes parents. So parents are, in fact, on average, I would guess, paying far less attention to their children and what media they're consuming, and that's a huge problem.
It's hard for Mrs. Johnson to keep her kids from looking at all the degenerate shit on Twitch if she's over here filming her like beauty TikToks and not paying attention to what the hell her kid is doing.
Or she's just, you know, like, I don't know, a nurse who has 13-hour shifts and has her kids in childcare or what have you. I mean, people have all sorts of reasons. And some of those reasons are more valid than others. But I promise you, if you never give your kids unlimited screen time in the first place, then it's not going to torture them to not have a screen in front of their faces. They're going to know no different. I mean, kids would rather play with actual toys, play with other children, have real social interaction. They would be none the wiser that they don't get to watch Cocomelon for 14 hours a day. And
if he comes home with an AI girlfriend, you got to say, look, just no. You're gonna have to bring home
Kick her out.
You're gonna have to bring a real girl home. Otherwise, we're not paying for the wedding. I guess she's got to pay the fake AI girlfriend's dad is supposed to. The AI dad is supposed to pay for the wedding, I suppose, if that just happened.
AI girlfriend and her AI disapproving father.
Her like just think about that. Think about all of the coming of age things that boys are missing out on to not be able to go to a real home, to have a real disapproving father looking at you in a way like he wants to harm you because you're taking his daughter to the dance.
Yeah. It's unfortunate.
Boys need that in their lives. Otherwise they're not going to be able to grow into men. Thanks for watching. Listen to full episodes of Pop Culture Crisis on Spotify.
Keep up with us on social media and make sure you subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss the show. Bye, guys.